Hello everybody and welcome back to a bit of a PSVR mini review. Now I'm only allowed to show you the first 5 levels of the game we're reviewing today in terms of footage, but after playing through it, I'm content enough to give you my thoughts. Today, we're talking about a shooter called Sugar Mess. Now this, on the surface, looks like Until Dawn Rush of Blood or Switchback meets Candy Crush, which is a very, very strange sentence that I've just put together, but really it does. And to be honest, it blew my expectations out of the water in terms of what a kid's shooter can be in VR and on PSVR2, just in terms of polish, because this is quite a simple game on the surface, but a lot of care has been put into this PSVR2 port, and I can tell that the devs have put some heart and soul into it, because it definitely comes across in the presentation. But it's not without its flaws, and it's not for everybody, so let's get into it. But before we do that, only 20% of you are subscribed, and we've just hit 10k, which is a nuts number, but if you do feel like subbing, that would be very helpful for the channel. Anyway, let's talk Sugar Mess. The game puts you in the shoes of a prince who creates his own sweet and chocolate kingdom with his subjects that all love him, with 2 robot companions, and one of the robot companions turns evil, turns against the king, and starts making evil cakes basically to send at him. You take on the role as this prince and have to shoot these cakes, going through the land, figuring out what's going on and settling it to return peace and prosperity to your kingdom. The story itself is presented through pretty wonderful visuals. The colours really pop here on the PSVR2, and visually it's as sharp as I'd say Walkabout Mini Golf is on the headset. So we are looking very, very nice here. Of course, there are budget restraints in terms of how much effort and love can be poured into the assets here. Some places do look a little bit barren, but for the most part, they've done a good job of creating assets and not just using marketplace bought ones like I've seen on some Steam VR games like this, in making the world feel cohesive and fun and vibrant, and it'll definitely mesh with a young audience quite well. The narrative is told through a book that's placed on a table in front of you with a bunch of pop-up scenes that are very cool, and this table is the basis of everything you do in the game. It takes you around a very cool world map that takes you through the events of the story, and you pick up and place your little prince figure around the map, depending on what level you want to play. The main menu, that is a kid's bedroom, also allows you to head over to an arcade machine where you can play the arcade game that's on it, or unlock new weapons using the currency you get from beating missions. So there is a bit of progression here in terms of what you want to upgrade in terms of your guns, and each of them have different quirks, benefits, strengths, and negatives to them. Each level you play is graded on rank, and the higher rank you get, the more coins you'll get to spend. The arcade game found on the machine isn't the most fun thing in the world, and honestly you won't spend that much time on it, but the space is mainly used just for those weapon upgrades, as I said. The levels take on a few forms, and I thought this was just going to be a pretty plain wave shooter, and to be honest, it kind of is on the surface, as the levels range from standing still and shooting oncoming enemies, to being on rails and shooting enemies that go past you or pop up, to boss fights which kind of take on the form of bullet hell wave shooters. But as you can probably tell in those descriptions, there's a fair bit of variation here. Sometimes you are static, sometimes you're moving, sometimes you're taking on one large enemy where you have to shoot weak points and dart around the map to avoid them. And it is quite cool to see the variation that's put into something that could be just as simple as a boring wave shooter. Of course, this is geared towards a more family-friendly audience, so this won't be for everybody, but if you've got kids and they want a shooter that's, family-friendly, appropriate for them, it'll do them just fine. In terms of locomotion, you have no control over it. There's no snap turning, there's no smooth turning, it's all the action is happening right in front of you, which could be a bad thing for some people and a good thing for others. Certainly for kids, there's less controls to worry about, but for us more experienced VR players, you might not get that much out of this because you are just standing there facing forwards and getting that 180 degrees of immersion rather than 360 in terms of your play space. The levels are broken up sometimes by puzzle segments. These are not really hard at all. I mean, as you can see, one of them took me 4 seconds to complete in the early stages of the game. But for younger audiences, again, they'd probably be stuck on these for a little longer in terms of matching up the shapes and the patterns to open up the gates to progress. The mechanics in the levels consist of reloading, shooting, and using power-ups like a rocket that will wipe all the enemies or weak points on boss enemies off the map, and a health kit that will boost your health back up to full that you'll see located on your wrist like a couple of other games do. For example, Ghost of Tabor has your info on your wrist, and so does Pavlov. It's the same here, but for your health. When you're on low health, the game uses PSVR2 features quite nicely by making those haptics go off on the headset, indicating that you're about to die. That's the sort of thing which kind of elevates this above a just mindless cash grab of a child-friendly game, because there is care put into it, and it's clear that there is, because any other dev that did not care would just throw the game into PSVR2 and not use the features like the haptics. But here they have, and they made it look damn good, as I said at the start of the video as well. The game really won't take you that long to complete, but the variety in the levels continues throughout the game, with encounters going on for longer as the levels progress and introducing more mechanics that might slightly overwhelm younger audience players, but the difficulty curve does feel fairly natural. The game overall though can be beaten in under an hour if you're playing through it in one sitting and just going for it, and to be honest, the price of $20, although it is on sale for $16 right now, might be a little high for that amount of playtime that you'll get from it, but for kids, if they've got the spare cash and want it, it is a good PSVR2 port of a family-friendly game. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Thank you to our patrons and YouTube members, Luke Bentley, Phil Irving, Hazit Mirza, Ace Gamer, Hippie Pickle, Jin007, A License to Chill, Sun, WTF, Piosco, and Back Controllers. Thank you all for watching once again, and I'll see you all in the next one.